How's it going, everyone? D-Stosh here, and it seems like the Halo well is running a bit dry, so I think after this video I may try to cover other topics. But I think something that we haven't necessarily thought of is maybe even with the delay, Halo Infinite's graphics will still be bad just because of the whole Xbox One and all that split-screen goodness. But what if the graphics don't necessarily need to be good? In fact, there's actually very good precedents for games not to have very good graphics, but still look good, and that may sound like a contradiction, but let's get into it. So, as we all know, Halo Infinite doesn't exactly look next-gen particularly. Even by Halo 5 standards, it looks a little bit subpar. Aside from Master Chief, awkwardly, Master Chief is very good looking in a very heterosexual way, but anyway, the game looks very bland and flat. But, you know, I think that even though it may be limited by the Xbox One, and it could be just limited in other ways, but I think that there is a way to make it look good without necessarily boosting the graphics, while that may not be possible. So, what do I mean? Well, let's look at a game that I think mastered this technique, and you're probably very aware of it. Now, for those of you living under a rock, this is Breath of the Wild. And Breath of the Wild isn't particularly a graphical powerhouse, but it still looks pretty damn good, and what that all comes down to is the art style. Now, Halo has always been known for its great-looking art style, but Halo Infinite seems to lack it a little bit. Everything looks really flat, which is a first, even for 343. Typically, 343 games looked pretty damn good. I mean, look at Halo 2 Anniversary, that's a pretty good looker. One of my favorite remasters, aside from Resident Evil 2 Remake. But, even, you know, Halo 5, even though some people don't necessarily, you know the story. But Halo 4 looks good too, especially, like, oh my goodness, running on the 360 when I first booted that game up in 2012. That game blew me away. When I first got out of the cryopod, the art team did an amazing job. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this, but Halo Infinite is lacking, I think, in style, in art style, and just overall, fidelity. And I think a good way to get around this without having to challenge the technical barriers is basically, perhaps Halo Infinite needs to be more stylized and maybe even cartoon-like. Now, you say, ooh, cartoon-like. I don't want Halo to look cartoony, but in a lot of ways, games like Halo Reach looked very cartoony. The Elite's proportions were weird, and the game looked really striking, even though, it wasn't the best-looking game at the time. I mean, I think back then, maybe even Black Ops might have looked better. But the thing that made Halo Reach look better than Black Ops to a lot of people is just the stylization of the world. And here you can see a lot of stylization. There's a lot of bold moves here, but you can see all the weird hexagons coming out of the ground, and it's misguided, I think. And this misguided look is really detrimental to the product. And there's also a lot of aspects to it that are non-stylized that look odd, like the pistol itself. The pistol doesn't really seem to be an improvement on anything. I'm kind of flabbergasted, I guess, basically, that they would go with a design like that, because who on the 343 art team thought that that looked better than the Magnum? And Halo Infinite is supposed to come out swinging, basically, because it's supposed to be the savior of Xbox, but it seems like, they just dropped the ball, very obviously in a lot of aspects, like the weapons. But I think that if you could restylize those weapons and make the world more stylized, maybe more cartoony, maybe have some cell shading, which I wouldn't go that far, but I would say you can kind of see how Breath of the Wild has some softer tones to it. It's not necessarily cell shaded, but you can see that it's not trying to mimic reality. And I think that that's the way it should go. Now, one other game I'd like to talk about is Halo 3, and Halo 3 to this day is still regarded as like a really good looking game. And the reason why it looks so good isn't just because of its technical proficiency. I mean, it was a pretty groundbreaking game for its time. But what really put it overboard is the art style. The art style has aged like a fine wine, and this game has just gone beyond just graphics. It's, you know, the way the brutes look, the way all the weapons feel and look, everything about it just oozes originality and complete boldness, in my opinion. And that's why Halo 3 is so well regarded for its graphical prowess, despite it even running at sub-HD resolutions on the original Xbox 360. This game is just a marvel of engineering, not just from a graphical standpoint, but from the art style, as I keep iterating. But yes, stylization, art, all of this stuff matters, and I think in a lot of ways it might matter more. I mean, nobody cared about Breath of the Wild looking, you know, not that great, but, you know, it's still considered a next-generation title, and it still looks damn good. And even if you look at the new game, it basically follows the exact same art style from what I can tell. But, yeah, perhaps a more stylized art style that can go into the more or less realistic aspects of the game and boost them. And if I can leave you with one thing, it's this image right here. This image comes from the art of Halo Infinite, and to me, if they could mimic this look, but with graphics, I think that Halo Infinite could be a breathtaking game. Perhaps even as breathtaking as Breath of the Wild. But anyways, this was D-Stosh. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please like it, and if you really like it, please subscribe, as it really helps the channel. Now, if you have any thoughts about this, please leave it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. D-Stosh out.